Taoism, Buddhism, New Age,
Oh
occult,
wow.
then atheism, materialism, and then and then I ran into the Jordan Peterson. Um, well, I heard of him because of the free speech thing, and then eventually he started doing the Bible lectures, and I had never heard anyone talking about the Bible that way.
Mhm.
Because the first thing he said was, I don't really want to talk about the historicity of the Bible. I don't think that's a very useful discussion. And I was just like, what? Because that's the only way I'd ever heard it discussed. The Mormons have a very historicity view of the scriptures. And so once he started talking about how it relates to consciousness and how it maps what we understand in neuroscience, I became deeply fascinated. And I was also impressed by his humility with regard to the scriptures and just saying, hey, this has been around for 2,000 years. Maybe there's something that we shouldn't discard here out of our hubris of, our modern worldview. And so I was already kind of starting to try to get back into spirituality. I already started meditating again and started opening up to that. And then when I heard him talking about the Bible, that's what led me to Jonathan Pajot, and there was a video called the Metaphysics of Pepe, and I was like, whoa, this is a thing, this is crazy. And that kind of opened the door to me to starting to open up to the symbolic worldview. So
What kind of Buddhist were you, and what kind of New Ager were you?
I was primarily practicing Zen Buddhism, but it really
Soto or Renzai?
Soto.
Oh, wait a second! No, you're not.
Okay.
You're not done.
I didn't spend much time there, so forgive
me. Oh, you're off the island. Goodbye.
No, it was part of my martial arts practice.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. My martial arts teacher was he was more of a Taoist, and actually we started with Buddhism because it was tied to the martial art, and then he actually introduced me to Taoism, and I moved to that. I spent quite a bit of time as a Taoist.
I was a Soto Zen Buddhist for 20 years on my way to a monastery.
And what?
On a way to a Zen monastery.
Oh, wow.
And becoming a burnout. And I was New Age and shaman. I was Shaman Ron, smoking weed. So anyhow.
That's common. Yeah. I mean, not common, but I mean, that's familiar, I should say.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think at this point, I used to be unique. Now.
I know, right? I know. We were wanderers before it was cool.
I know.
Yeah. That's why I tell people, that's why I told my daughter about tattoos. She was asking me about tattoos. She's 17. And I was like, look, Safi, when I was young, and even when I was a kid, my dad had to cover up his tattoos in order to get a job, because if they saw his tattoo, they wouldn't hire him. Right. And I was like, now not getting a tattoo,
face tattoos,
it means what getting a tattoo meant when I was a kid, right? Like not getting a tattoo is the new rebellion.
Yeah. Oh, dude, clean skin. Wow, that's rebellious.
Far out.
I'm trying to encourage you. Yeah, I'm trying. So,
there's a comment.
Okay, look at this beast. Look at this beast. Wow. He's fearsome.
Bring it closer to the camera. Closer to the camera. Hi, puppy. Hi, puppy.
Oh, he's got the wiggles. Yeah. Man, I'm getting some shocks. My whole system. I'm gonna keep talking. I'm gonna switch over headphone.
All right. So
plug in somewhere.
Okay, Jeremy. And I was a Buddhist.
Okay.
And I came to faith through a mantra. William Branch, my Zen was Soto as well. William.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. We got to do what's it at? AB? Wait, it's S. Soto. Yeah. So that's,
yeah. I don't know. So there's like a gang sign.
Yeah. Soto. Wait, what's your gang sign for Zen Buddhism? This is it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay. I had a good thought actually, and then I lost it for comedy's sake, which was bad. What was I talking about?
You were Buddhist, and then you kind of fell away. I mean, not fell away, but you got burned out, and then you were New Age and shaman. And
I came, and this relates to Orthodoxy, and you might like this. So I'm a Buddhist with Jewish, going to church, no grid, don't know how to pray for nothing. I make a mantra, and I unplug Buddha, and I plug in Jesus. And I purposely made the mantra so I hated it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh,
it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What'd you say?
It's great practice. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's a great practice. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know it. I took everything I hated and I mashed it, synthesized it into a short statement. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Lord. Love you, Jesus. Love you, Lord. Glory, hallelujah.
So everything you hated was a beautiful prayer, right?
Yes.
I love it. That's so great. That's so good.
And to be honest, it was effective because I did the whole Jesus prayer, and I'm not against that because it is a moment of faith that is like a tomato growing up a lattice. It's just a prayer, and it's legit, and it's not necessary, but it is beneficial. So, but absolutely nothing happened after I did the prayer. So I made the mantra, and I hated it for about 2.5 months. In fact, I think I was being convicted by the Holy Spirit of everything. And it was every spirit I had invited was going, oh, hell no.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Very uncomfortable. Right.
Yeah. And then but best I can describe it is I intuitively knew it was like a jackhammer, that prayer. It was like a bit drilling down. And then there was a day where there was contact, like a spark on a room full of gas, and it just it detonated.
You're stacking metaphors, and I'm kind of coming in the middle. Can you? What are you talking about?
I was just giving my testimony.
Okay.
That was it. It was just I had no church background, didn't know how to pray, made a mantra, unplugged Buddha, plugged in Jesus, repeated it for about 2.5 months ad nauseum. I mean, morning, noon, and night.
Right. Yeah.
And it's interesting. It was God leading me, and I didn't know it. That's my best guess, because I wouldn't. But it reminds me of a compression engine where you have a chamber and a piston and a gas, and it compresses until the right time.
Yep.
And then a spark, and bam. But I know it was the prayer, and I don't know if I'm using the right word. It was either the tool or the engine. It was the means by which it all occurred. And and then I get my encounter with God, and I didn't know Orthodox or Catholicism or Pentecostalism, but then I go to these bookstores, especially Catholic bookstores, Teresa of Avila, Brother Lawrence, and then I picked up the Philokia, or man, you said
the Philokalia.
Yes,
the Philokalia. Yeah,
that was just that was spiritual brain candy for me.
Oh, Philokalia is like it's a very potent elixir, and someone just said it's basically like PhD of spirituality, right? Like elementary school, and elementary school is essentially Lives of the Saints, and then you graduate to the Evergetinos, which are the sayings of the Desert Fathers. There's like 4 volumes of that, and then once you that's like high school, and then you graduate into the Philokalia, which is the manual of prayer. The manual for prayer for monastics, essentially. But it's not just for monastics. It's also for lay people, but it's primarily the audience for monastics. But yeah, it's intense.
Jeremy, do you have a kind of cognitive science approach to Orthodox practices, or do you have a more, for lack of a better phrase, charismatic view?
That's a really good question. And I'll have to say, when I first came in, I was very left brain oriented, and I have some of the tism. So it was much easier or more comfortable for me to dive into the theory and the theology and the philosophy. But I quickly found myself swimming because I wasn't familiar with a lot of the terminology they were using, and it really didn't. I graduated from high school. I went to a little college, quickly realized that's not my scene, and I'm basically just an autodidact. And because of that, I didn't really have a coherent foundation of philosophical understanding. And so, I mean, I'd always read philosophy, but really didn't have a framework to understand what they were talking about. And my priest actually gave me an obedience and said, for every book of theology you read, I want you to read the life of an ancient saint, and I want you to read the life of a modern saint. And that's one of the best things that I've done for my spirituality, because the way he put it is that the lives of the saints are basically the applied gospel. It's the way the gospel looks in a life of someone who has been through theosis and is experiencing it, and who is, transformed. Their lives have been transformed by Christ. And so I would say that my comfort zone is in the abstract theoretical thinking, but the longer I spend in Orthodoxy, the more wisdom I find in studying the lives of the saints, and not like now I'm starting to just come back to reading some of the, theology, like on the Incarnation by Saint Athanasius, or an exact exposition of the Orthodox faith, which is by Saint John of Damascus. And just recently I've been able to actually understand what they're talking about. But for most of the time, I was just lost, because they're using old philosophical terms, and they're using a framework of, like the four elements, earth, wind, air, and fire, and like all that stuff. I just didn't have a framework for understanding what they were talking about. But through the lives of the saints and going to divine liturgy, I've been very convinced of the power of just participation, and then my daily prayer rule. It's like, all of a sudden these things start making sense, and I just understand it when I read it, and I go, oh, okay, I understand what he's talking about. And I don't really can't explain why. It's just immersion, It's like learning a language by just being around people who speak the language long enough. It just kind of eventually comes in. So I don't know if that answers your question very well, but
I was just, because you mentioned you were you kind of came to Orthodoxy vis-a-vis Peterson. Maybe wonder,
Sam Harris,
along the way, but you obviously had an interest in the subject of, and I see a lot of parallels between what happens in across religious traditions, and there, I think the cognitive science, there's something going on there that's common to a common thread running through a lot of these things that may or may not have anything specifically to do with a unique faith. It's just on the, and I think that's probably Vervaeke's interest. Why Vervaeke's at the table during the gospel seminar, for example, right? On the other hand, I function much more like a charismatic, in that it's just, it's the presence of Christ, and that's what I run with. I don't really, I don't really care about the science too much. I mean, it's okay. It's okay, and it's interesting but it's like, which is it? What does Jesus say? Which is it easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or stand up and walk?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I kind of feel the same, where it's like, I was originally enamored with the theology and the beauty of, a coherent worldview, but found myself quickly swimming over my head, and had to ground myself in the very rooted, basic practices and learning the lives of the saints and reading the lives of the saints, because basically there's a church father who says, I was just reading this quote today, he just basically said, you can't understand theology until your life is in order. You have to be living the commandments and be living the faith, basically, doing the rule, going to liturgy and doing your prayer rule and reading scriptures and doing alms and fasting. And you need some training. You've got to get your life together, basically, and get it straightened out before you can even begin to approach the theology, because
This
you
was
just
your
don't have the
priest.
framework.
Your priest told you that?
No, there was a saint who said that, but my priest says the same thing.
That's a very yogic approach. I mean, it's very Eastern, isn't it? I mean, it's
yeah. You because it's incarnational. Any work you do to calm yourself physically, which is what fasting and prayer is about, has an effect on your spirit, and then the attention practice that you're working on in prayer leads to you being able to calm physically. Like, my blood pressure's gone down, I lose weight, I've gone off of ADHD meds, all these things, not because I made any dramatic lifestyle change. I mean, I'm still gluttonous and overweight, but just because of prayer and going to divine liturgy, right? It's just, it heals you. And as it heals you, you're able to give more attention to what you're reading or what you're paying attention to. And also prayer, it trains, I don't know how to put this, but the word in Greek, in the Orthodoxy, is nous. It trains your nous. So your nous is basically your heart. It's sometimes translated as just mind, but it's not just your mind. Basically, it's like the organ by which you apprehend God. And it's like your ability to pay attention, your ability to pray, your ability to see God moving around you, to see others as icons of Christ. That's all the function of your nous. And prayer is to train your nous. Divine liturgy is there to heal your nous. The sacraments of the church are all there to heal your nous, which allows you to see God more clearly in your life and to, unlock what the scriptures are talking about. Basically.
Would nous also be spirit? I'm more Pentecostal charismatic.
Yeah. I mean, spirit, but so like, there's different definitions of that in the Greeks. The Greek church fathers. There's spirit, and then there's also mind, and you have soul. And they would say like soul is just like the life force. Like, when you're alive, your soul is in you, and when you die, your soul is left, and your soul is what's keeping your body alive, right? It's like when something's alive, it has a soul. Okay. When it dies, it doesn't have a soul. But your spirit and your nous are kind of intertwined. Okay. And your nous is like your nous is essentially your faculty for paying attention. And when you come from a worldly background and you've been following your passions and following your desires and distractions and just following your will, your nous is darkened and blinded and like barely functional.
So would it be fair for me to equate nous, in my mind, nous and spirit as?
It depends on what you mean by spirit, because some people mean like personality or, and
I'll explain. Because I think we're talking about the same thing. I'm just learning a new language.
Sure.
And so for me, it is, I feel God with my spirit. When it is his spirit bearing witness with mine. It's very specific. And it's only with him and through him and by him that this occurs. So
yeah. So I just looked up a quote here. Let me share my screen if that's okay. Because this is really helpful. Where is it? Here we go. So, like I said, nous is typically just translated as your mind, but it's not that. It's so here you're saying it's the eye of the soul, right? Well, so it's the center of your being.
The eye of the soul. That's interesting.
Yeah, and so so our senses and our sensory perception are made to basically help our nous, and so we would say, angels have intelligence and nous, whereas men have reason, nous, and sensory perception, and that kind of distinguishes us from the angels. So reason is separate from nous, which is why you approaching the scriptures, kind of what you were talking about, Mark, from the cognitive science point of view, really doesn't take you very far, because the whole purpose of scriptures in our mind is to train your nous on how to see God and to heal it, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's separate from reason. Now you can use reason, and we use reason in our theology, and we use reason for understanding and for communicating and talking and trying to approach God. But ultimately we believe that, God is something that you encounter, someone you encounter. It's not something that you reason to, it's above reason. It's like beyond language, basically. When you have an encounter with God, it's
Right.
beyond language. So mankind is nous, word, and spirit, right? So soul is created in the image of God, so God is Trinitarian. Mankind is nous, word, and spirit. So we would actually say nous is separate from the spirit.
Nous is separate. So
Right. So nous is like God, word is Christ, spirit would be the breath of Christ or the breath of God, right? So like, but nous would be like the source and your ability to pay attention, your ability to look.
that's the eye of the soul.
Yeah.
Or
Also called the heart. It's the center of man where true knowledge is validated. So something that was really interesting for me is that before I came to Orthodoxy, for me, spirituality and emotions were like coupled. So I would go to these services, and Mormons kind of focus on like inciting emotional experiences, like emotional, like it's like for lack of a better term, forgive me, it's like going to a Disney movie where there's like, or like to a Broadway musical where there's like this thematic building of music and message to get you have an emotional experience, and they conflate that with a spiritual experience. And that's what I thought spirituality was. And then through Zen Buddhism, I thought, well, maybe there's more to it, and then Taoism as well, right? Maybe there's more to it than just having these emotional reactions. And then through Orthodoxy, I've had these experiences where in prayer, I'm just standing there, I'm in prayer, and like tears just start running down, and I'm not feeling any kind of intense emotion. Nothing is overwhelming or nothing is moving.
Right.
But I'm weeping.
There's something on the inside going on.
That's nous. Yeah, that's
I gotcha. Okay. I think for me, that would be spirit. And I'm just trying to get.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. I appreciate
nous is like your ability to point your attention at something, right? So you're doing the same thing in meditation. You're training your ability to pay attention, right? And to discipline it, right? You're disciplining your attention faculty, right? Pay back to your breath, right? It's like counting your breaths, paying attention to how your breath feels when it comes in your nose, as it goes out your nose. All of those exercises are training your attention. That's essentially we see as one of the major functions of prayer. But we're training our attention onto God, which is why we use the Jesus prayer.
Right. So I see there's comments here.
Yeah.
Hi, Clara. Will.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're talking between themselves or about what we're talking about necessarily.
Are you guys talking between yourselves, or are we invited?
You got something from Luke here.
I'm getting wooed, yeah. Jeremy's
bringing the woo. Talking about nous.
I know. That's the hard part, is it's like you begin to experience these things, and it's hard to put into words because
so we need to define what is woo. And have you ever heard that song, baby, don't hurt me. Oh yeah, like it's like what is woo? It's just
Well, I'd actually back up and want to say, let's define what is a charismatic, because I'm in the corner. Charismatics take quite a beating. They took in the back and forth, give and take. I don't know if it's because there's so many former Pentecostals or former charismatics or deconstructed such in the corner, or I was listening to Sam back and forth with who was the panel this morning? The names are escaping me. Jason?
Oh, Jess was in there.
That's right. Jess was in there, and Luke had started it.
Luke was in there. Yeah.
Luke was in there. It was somebody who's a young man with a little thin face, dark beard, a little short trimmed beard. Why can't I remember his name?
Alex?
Yeah, maybe it's Alex. I don't. No.
I didn't catch the whole.
No, that wasn't Alex. Anyways,
yeah,
it was just they were. It seemed like we were getting poor charismatics were getting a little bit of trash talked. And the funny thing is my definition. What I think is lacking is a definition of what, for me, this is what a charismatic. For me, I'm a charismatic if you believe that God and Hebrews 11:6. You believe God is and is a rewarder of those who faithfully. Let me pull it up. I don't want to butcher.
Those who diligently seek Him.
There you go. Thank you. Let's read it though, because it's really good here. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He is and is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek Him.
Amen.
And I think God intervenes in space time on our behalf.
Right.
And that to me is, if you believe that, you may not want to call yourself a charismatic, but you essentially are. Because because you may not have. I mean, part of the problem seems to be that with TV preaching, where that's developed over the years, Pentecostals and charismatics kind of dominated that space and developed a very marketable theology that was very American and easily sold, right? Do X, Y, and Z, and you'll get this outcome.
Yeah, if then kind of transaction.
Kind of if then. Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the poison. That's what seems to have poisoned the well.
It did. So what were you asking though, Mark? You said what is charismatic?
What is a charismatic? That's if with you rather than define. I mean, woo is a bit of a we're being tongue in cheek with the woo.
But you know what? I heard this, and I just recently, and I think it was on that panel discussion with Jordan Peterson. To correctly put it, because they were talking. Oh, I was PBK. He said the moment you say supernatural, you've lost because you've gone into modernity. If you go simply say the kingdom of heaven is here, like Scripture, that's what charismatic is. A miracle is not supernatural at all. It's just the kingdom of heaven here now.
Yeah, I would use the word incarnational.
Okay.
Right. Or sacramental. Like the sacramental worldview is something you hear around here a lot.
So if you have a miracle, an arm comes back alive, is that sacramental? Or what are you saying?
I'm saying I'm saying this. I'm saying the act of perception itself is a mystical experience, in my opinion. And this is what I mean by that. Okay. So yeah, I agree, William, and I agree that like Descartes is the one who tried to split the world into spirit and matter, and I think it's a false dichotomy. I think it's a distinction without division. And this is what I mean by that. So when I look at we'll use the old example, the glass, right? So a glass has, it has physical properties, and it has essential properties that make it a glass, right? So it's got an opening, it's shaped in such a way that it can hold liquid conveniently, won't tip over easily. This one happens to be see-through, but it's also got accidental properties. So it's a particular color. This one's made of glass. Some of them are made of plastic. It would be a cup regardless of what it was made of if it was shaped like this, right? Unless it was like lead, and then maybe I wouldn't want to use it. But anyway, so we have essential properties and accidental properties of this glass. Those properties are above the glass. They're not, there are categories that I use to apprehend the glass and see it as a glass, right? And I see it as something I can grab, and I can see it as something that'll hold liquid. I see its instrumentality toward a purpose. And in order, so this comes to the question of, do we invent patterns and categories that we then use to lay onto the world and organize it? Or when we are perceiving the world, are those patterns embedded in the world and I'm perceiving them? Okay.
Yeah.
So the first view of they're invented and I'm just laying them on, and I can change them at will by changing the definition of my category. Philosophically, that's called nominalism.
Come again?
Nominalism is the name of that philosophically. So nominal comes from name, nom, right?
Oh,
Nominalism.
okay. Thank you.
So nom is like gnome, which is the Latin for name. And that's like it's like a cat. It's just a category of names. And I just make up the names categories ad hoc, and I can change those at will. Okay. And this is I share the view of Dr. Nathan Jacobs in saying that I think this is the root of our culture war right now, are people who are natively wired to be nominalists, and you have other people who are natively wired to be the other side of this, which is realism. And realism says, no, the reason I can see this as a cup is because it has the properties of cup are embedded in this, and I'm apprehending them because the properties of cup are essentially, well, not all nominalists or not all realists would use this way of using it, but Christians would, as far as a Christian realist would say, Christ is logos. He is the organizational principle for all of creation. And when I'm apprehending a cup, I'm apprehending Christ manifesting as cup in this form of logos, and his logos is embedded in this cup, and I'm apprehending it, which is why I can perceive it as cup, because logos is the underlying pattern of reality that we all participate in. And that's why I say perceiving a cup is a mystical experience. So it's the sacramental worldview of the logos of Christ is embedded in all things, which is what allows me to perceive them.
Yes.
It's something mapped onto the physical, but not contained in the physical, because it's above and outside of the physical, right? So a cup is a category. It's a metaphysical category. So rather than supernatural, it's meta-natural, right? So it's a layer above, right? So physics is the physical cup, the physical properties, but it's in the category of cup, and category is metaphysical, right? But in order to perceive it, I have to see its physical properties and map and I see the metaphysical mapping of cup on it, right? So this is in my opinion, once I understood that, so heaven would be the metaphysical category, and earth is the physical, and I perceive it when they come together, and I can see this physical thing as a cup. Okay. So that's why it's sacrament. It's a sacrament because I'm participating in the heavenly and the earthly at the same time, which is why it's incarnational. It's the heavenly category of God manifested physically.
At every time, at every moment. And it's
correct. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And so then it's only God who gives us, by his spirit, that insight to, to remove the scales. And
it's what we're wired to do. It's the purpose of our creation. Yeah. Is to apprehend this.
For me, when I had my aha moment with God, middle of dirt field, doing the prayer, hating life, meeting God, nothing really changed on the outside, but inside, it's like he was everywhere, at every moment, taking care of every atom, and I couldn't get away from him, even if I hid under the dirt.
Right. 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 He's in all things.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So this is why Zero took such a long time to come out in the West, because the whole idea of nothing, of being a place where God didn't exist, was like antithetical to their metaphysics.
Go
right?
ahead.
They were just like, "What are you talking about? How can there be zero? There's no zero."
Right.
Like that's just like wrong.
Oh, that's interesting. That's
Yeah,
like
the zero didn't come to the West until Newton and Leibniz. And that's actually what they used to invent calculus.
Yeah. What
So.
I could be silly and say, well, what'd you say when you had no bananas in the bucket or apples? How many, anyhow, I don't
Well, they
want
wouldn't count that. They wouldn't count that. That's why we have year one. We don't have year zero. Because you're counting something, you're always counting one. You don't count zero, right? You don't count zero of things. I mean, they would say nothing or none. I mean, they would say none, but there was no like ontological category. They believed it didn't have ontological reality. Zero.
Jeremy, what you described just sounds to me a great deal like a Christianized Neoplatonism. I mean, I'm struggling
there's a lot
to
of mapping between Neoplatonism and Orthodox Christianity. I can't deny that. Now, where we would stop is in all of the demon worship, right? Like in the demon kind of appeasements that are part of Neoplatonism.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like, a lot of the worldview and even some of our practices definitely are tied to or related to Neoplatonism. Yeah, there's definitely some overlap in the Venn diagram there. Yeah.
Because my view of some, I mean, my whole approach would be a cup is whatever you use as a cup.
Right, the utilitarian kind of view.
If a thing is there's no
intrinsic meaning.
There's no thingness in a thing.
There's no identity. The thing itself doesn't have an identity.
It's the you could call it Buddhist, but you could also just call it modernist in that sense that it's the use. You find it. A cup is what you use as a cup. I mean, it's just that. I mean, it's. I don't rather go on be that. It seems like the same more is kind of ludicrous.
Yeah, it is the nominal view that I think you find more natural, where you would say that patterns are invented, not discovered. Or
I would say it's the nature of our reality that we experience, and Christ intervenes to, in a sense, what our experience is of the world is itself. Well, our experience of what we call life is temporal and fleeting, and therefore dead in itself. And Christ intervenes to bring life, meaning, purpose, joy, the fruit of the Spirit in our experience, which, instead of seeing the world as a fully, I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying this.
No.
It's just more
different views. Yeah.
I have no problem seeing the world as empty. I struggle much more with a Platonist point of view than I do with a kind of idealist point of view than I do with simply saying it's empty. And it's there for it's empty, and its emptiness is there to be filled by the living presence of Christ. So it's a you might call it a bottom up or a resurrection approach to
Blank
instead of
slate,
top down. Go ahead.
Blank slate, basically.
Neutral
Or like pure potential. Like you would see matter as pure potential?
The word potential even makes me nervous.
Oh, okay.
That is not nervous in anything. I'm not deeply
No, no, I
anxious. I'm
get
just
it.
saying.
I'm using it like in the way
It's
Aristotle went.
because it is. Yeah, no, I wouldn't go that far either.
Okay.
It's. I just. Um, Again, this is where language we run into our limits.
No, this is good. This is good to sit with.
What do you think, Ron? Do you have something to fill in? Do you come in? Do you find yourself leaning one way or another, or do you have
Well,
another approach that you could?
when you guys go Neoplatonism, in the TV set of my mind, I go,
Right.
and I'm not opposed. It's just
Right.
you guys are going somewhere that a lot of people here have a deep understanding that I'm just now becoming aware of. That there's God talks through philosophy. I've seen it with a few people in the corner. They wrestle with God there. And
Right.
so if you want to do a 101, what is Neoplatonism for a guy who's I've never been interested in it. I'm not opposed, but I don't even have a clue what you're talking about. If you can give me the elevator understanding just to get me at least following the trail.
Well, I think I can give you, I can give you a quick overview. Okay. So you had Plato first, or Socrates, depending on who you attribute it to, who's saying we existed first as spirits. We lived in a perfect realm, and this realm was filled with perfect forms. We come here into this world. This is a fallen world, but we recognize the reason we can recognize this cup is because it's a particular manifestation of the perfect form of cup that we are familiar with from our prior existence as spirits in the perfect realm. Okay.
Got it.
You had Aristotle who came along and said, where is this realm of forms?
Okay.
And so he believed that the cup was the form of cup was intrinsic to the cup itself.
Yes.
And so that the identity cup was embedded in the cup, which is ultimately what led to the nominalist point of view.
Nominalism.
Nominalism is the one that Mark kind of leans toward, where categories are arbitrary and we impose them onto physical reality, and that we can change them kind of by changing our group definition for a word is the way that we change the category we use to refer to.
So when it goes from spirit to physical is where you get the disconnect.
Yeah, right. So Aristotle basically just said there is no realm of forms. The category of cup is embedded in the physical thing itself.
Okay.
And the category of cup is just an agreed upon category that we all have agreed on. Socially.
All right, I'm tracking.
With me now? A little bit, yeah. Okay.
No,
so basically, category, like a category, and numbers, and would be something metaphysical that we use to refer to the physical, but is above.
From the spiritual point of, this show isn't really about metaphysics or physics, so I'll not go, or even philosophy, go too far down that road. But in terms of from Scripture, spiritually speaking, I would say it the idealism of Platonism and Neoplatonism, I stumble on it when I come, because for me it's a bit of a stumbling block in that it's in John chapter 3. Jesus said, "I did not come to condemn the world is condemned already."
No, he came to heal it. Yeah.
Okay.
So because there is a final step. So the final step for us would be, in the Christian worldview, we see that Christ is the one who united idealism and nominalism, basically, or he was the one who rectified those
Yeah.
by saying by basically what the early church fathers said is that both the physical cup and the category of cup, or the logos, in, you would say, the mind of God.
Okay.
In the they used hypostasis, like in the
Okay.
person of God, right? So basically they're reconciling the two by both saying that they proceed from God,
Okay.
and that by perceiving the world, the only reason we can is because we're in the image of Christ. We can
Right.
see his logos
Right.
in the physical world, but that they're united. So heaven, if heaven is the metaphysical or the concepts, and earth is the physical and the potential, those come together when we perceive an object and
Okay.
have a name for it.
Now
Right.
I can tie this back together, because you guys were talking about Neoplatonism in prayer. That's why I
Right.
needed the time out, just to get me. So, Mark, I think it was you who mentioned it was prayer that was somewhat Neoplatonistic, or because that's.
I didn't
That's
say
when
prayer is. I didn't say
Oh,
prayer is.
not prayer. You were talking. Somehow you got onto the.
I just said. I'm
Well,
not sure I'm following you, Ron. I'm
Well,
sorry.
because I asked for the timeout to get the understanding. And you were talking about how Neoplatonism came into the conversation, and you asked me, what was I thinking about this conversation? And I said, well, it was kind of like a blank TV set. And now that I'm understanding where you guys are at, what were you talking about just a few seconds before I asked you for the timeout? Because I could probably remember. Because where were we at? Because I want to get back on that track.
Well, I think I can tie it together to another way of putting it. So you have some people that say God is transcendent only, right? He's outside time and space, outside category, outside of thought, beyond language, beyond everything physical, beyond everything comprehensible, right? And you have some people who say God is immanent, meaning God is the physical world. God is what you perceive. God is, so that would be a pantheist, right? So this is a lot of Buddhism falls into this view of God. The universe is God. The incarnational view is that, and the traditional Christian view is that God is transcendent and immanent.
Okay.
God is outside time and space, beyond all category, incomprehensible, and condescended to us by taking on a body and walking around and teaching people things and doing miracles.
Right.
Through love, and came into the world to heal it and reconcile it with him.
Right.
Through love, right? Through teaching us what love is, and showing us his love, and showing us what his humility and his great, his self-emptying. He emptied himself to reveal himself. Right? That's the paradox, right?
Right. And I think I was, because what started this a while ago, it was to define charismatic. And I talked about the kingdom of heaven. And then it went to the
news. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was talking about prayer as well.
Right.
And prayer renewing the mind, or is it? Okay.
Yeah, we would see that. Yeah, renewing the mind and the body and the spirit and the nous, like it's all being healed through prayer. Yeah. That's why we typically stand during prayer. We light a candle, we're standing in front of icons. It's a physical practice as much as it's a spiritual or a mental one. For us, it's like we don't think you can separate the two. We think it's delusional to think that you could do something physically without it having mental and spiritual effects as well.
Well, actually, I can. That's simple, because that's, let's say, fornication.
Right.
Like there's your sign, or eating taking communion unworthily.
Right. Right.
Book of Galatians, you're going to have a problem.
Right. Yeah.
So
What if, can we try something? Just
Yeah.
shift gears really quick.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't know like the framework of your show.
No.
I don't know
No.
how
There's,
to
you're
help
fine,
it.
Jeremy. Thank you.
I'm-
No, this is
I'm
good.
not
It's
being a
good
great
to,
guest. I'm sorry.
it's,
forgive
no,
me.
you're
No, this
terrific.
is
You're
fun
doing
too.
great.
Okay.
You're doing great.
There's no crying in baseball. There's no format here.
Well, no, I should have.
No. It's just, I don't know. When I said I don't want to pursue the philosophy too much because it's not really, there's so many channels that do that
Right.
in the corner. So we're trying not to not,
I got and here's the thing, and Mark, unless you got something, is
I have something locked, ready to go, but go ahead.
lock
Finish.
and load, so let it rock and roll.
No. Continue.
Well,
Speak
for
thy
me,
peace.
What has been, I have been an outlier and very well received, and I'm not like boo-hooing it, but my thing is woo. I am, dude. Miracle signs and wonders, got boatloads of them. Can help you do it too. Order yours today. Like I will teach you how to be that guy or girl. It's not difficult at all. And then I come here and it's a different universe. I mean, and it was through, and I'll say it, McMo and Mandy. I had a conversation once with them on Discord, and they shared with me how they wrestled, how McMo, I think it was Heidegger, that is his big go-to guy, and how beneficial, and Mandy as well. And I'm not trying to out them, but they shared it, and then it was Neil who talked to me as well, how Jordan Peterson and philosophy helped them give meaning to their pain and suffering. And I'm like, okay, that's valid. There's something there. And that to me is a different, I don't want to say form of healing, but I'm recognizing it. I'm like, oh, wait a second. I'm not of this world, but I'm not against it. And I'm trying to understand it. And so, and I think, and this is a comment, I'll land on this. I'll finish it. I think a lot of people in the corner need the woo. They have the philosophy, they have the big brain, but they don't know how to put a spark to the gunpowder and activate the faith and have the breakthrough they want.
Could you just call it the experience?
Yeah,
they need the experience.
And also a lot of them are having it and they don't know.
Well, that's a huge factor for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's that for sure. The discernment. Right.
Well, actually more, and I really love that part where I'll talk to someone and they'll say, Ron, this happened. I'm like, what? Like, okay, I'll give an example. Mark S., I think it was on
last week, right?
Yeah, last week. He's like, well, I've never had really anything mystical happen, except I had a demon come visit me after some sleep paralysis. And I'm like, really? Nothing mystical, huh? Let's talk about that. And so I'm like, no, dudes, it was mystical. You got a big brain, and also you need some I just learned it is defense DA. Defense.
Oh yeah.
The
dark arts, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I see a need for basic karate moves, theological karate moves to take care of, some bad demons in people's lives, some bugaboos that aren't that difficult to deal with, but they just don't know how to just yet. They don't have the basics.
Let's answer Clara's question.
Yeah, go ahead. What's her question?
Do you see it? Can you see it? Are miracles, signs, and wonders a necessary part of this?
No, but it's better than me being a burnout or my friend being still in the wheelchair.
Leba says no, Clara.
miracles and signs and wonders, and it says, well, wait a second, I got a question.
Sure.
And so probably I will gently say no, but what? Okay, all right, I'm gonna push
This
back.
stuff. Can we define this stuff, Clara? Because before I go on too far,
Yeah.
I don't know what she means by all this stuff. If you mean Christianity, you kind of, I don't know how. I mean,
why?
short of being a Tom Holland Christian atheist,
Well, wait, Tom
I don't
had-
know how you get away from miracles since you have the resurrection.
Tom met the Virgin Mary. Tom Holland.
He had his own mystical.
Yeah, he did. He did.
So-
Yeah. What do you think, Jeremy?
So what I would say is that we in our tradition are taught not to pursue experiences, because when you pursue experiences, you are opening the door to being deceived by experiences. And we believe that that's totally possible for demons.
But you just described a whole bunch of experiences you had.
Yes, but we're not to seek them, and we're actually to ignore them and to distrust them. And when you start experiencing something, instead of saying, is this it? Is this God? You immediately were taught to say, this is obviously not, because I'm not worthy of that. Now, if it is, God will persist and it will be clear, but you will be rewarded for your humility. So rather than jumping to the conclusion of what I'm experiencing right now is from God, we're taught it's much safer to assume that whatever you're experiencing is not from God, and that you should be very cautious about it and very sober about it, and not get carried away, and to just cross yourself and go back to praying. And if the things persist, then, we're also like, this is why we have spiritual fathers. This is why I have a priest who's much further along spiritually than I am. He's had more experience with these things than I have. And he even reaches out to monks and abbots and abbesses of monasteries at times for their advice and counsel. And it's because we're taught it's very easy to be deceived once you begin to pray, because most of us are delusional. Our nous is darkened. We are easily confused, and we come from a world of fulfilling our will and passions for most of our lives. So we lack the experience to know the source of what we're encountering. And so we're taught to distrust it, just default to distrusting it. And if it's God, he'll reward you for your humility and make it clear. And if you're still in doubt, talk to your spiritual father about it. But so we don't.
Clara, hop on, by the way,
miracles.
if you're
We
free.
go, miracles are probably deceptions. Lord, please don't deceive me.
See, here's the thing. This is where I'll push back, and not like.
No, it's fine. No, I'm just telling you our tradition. That's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
that's and I value it. Like, trust me, I'm not shutting you down, but just because of and I'm gonna go mega woo. I think I'm gonna do the first mega woo moment. I know people who have raised the dead, and I've been around it once in 24 years. Absolutely hate it. Because first you have to have a dead person, and that's never fun. The only reason, okay, so it kind of goes along with what you're saying. I never sought out the miracles, but there was a necessity. And the other people that were raised from the dead were dead from heroin. And it was moms that I know brought back their kids. And, some passed away. Then they were in my church. You know what? Maybe I'm in more agreement with you than I know.
Could I pitch something at you? This is what this came up maybe on our
go
first
for it.
House of Woo.
Yeah.
I said spiritual gifts are better recognized than claimed.
Oh.
And for me, I don't chase after
Right.
or claim any spiritual gift,
Right.
but what I do respect is if someone sees, I recognize them in others, and then if occasionally somebody will come along and recognize something in me, and if it's confirmed and then confirmed again, then maybe I'll lightly I'll lightly carry it or wear it
Okay.
as it comes and goes, depending on the it's spiritual experiences seem to function very much that way for me as well. It's just better It's better recognized than claimed or chased. I've never chased after it.
Right.
Which goes to, I wanted to talk to you about your discussion with Ashley Land on a couple points, Ron,
Okay.
along these lines.
By the way,
It's not off topic, but
okay, go for it.
but with that said, Jeremy, does that help at all?
Yeah, I think, humility is best. I definitely see. So here's the other thing is perceiving God's will or God's movements in our lives is generally very difficult, at least for me. And because, so what the other thing, and it's a corollary to this, we're taught to pray for mercy for someone, and then we see whatever happens in their life as God's mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it might not look what we thought it would.
Mm-hmm.
That might mean someone died quickly rather than
long
or drawn out, or it might mean that they live a very long, drawn out death and suffering, because we pray for God's mercy, and then we see whatever happens in their life as God's mercy. And that's another aspect of this, of when you see a shining light, it might not be God.
I
When
agree
you
with
see
you.
darkness, it might not be a demon.
Oh,
Right?
that's interesting.
Because when you see when people encounter angels, when angels appear to people in the scriptures, inevitably it says they fall down afraid.
Not always.
Almost.
And,
Generally speaking, they feel afraid or they fall down afraid.
well, and the only reason is, and I'm not trying to pick. I'm
No,
just
no.
saying. But wasn't there? Yes, you're right. Usually they do, but there are times when
Not always, right?
Okay, that's all.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
saying.
not always. I'm just
Okay.
saying frequently we see the pattern of people, an angel appearing and people are terrified. And frequently in our modern mind, we go, well, if I was terrified, it was a demon. And that not necessarily be the case, which is
I'm sorry.
another reason we lack discernment and can't trust our own feelings,
Uh,
right? This is why for us, we just go, assume it's a demon. And if it persists, consult your priest.
Okay.
That's kind of the advice we're given, right?
And by the way,
So-
because I am so charismatic, I would actually want someone like you around me to be that balance. Like, dude, I'm like, pray first, ask questions later, and do not quit until you get what they need. I'm built that way. I can't not fight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Well, you have examples of
What
all of
there's,
these.
there's a time though where you surrender, right? Where you surrender into
probably, I'm just feeling in my general nature.
sure, yeah.
If I see a cane, a crouch, a cast, a sling, cancer, a cold, I'm like, would you like prayer? Would you?
Yeah, sure.
So
Well, it's like that it's like that segment of the Wimber sermon I played at the very beginning. Wimber said, I'm teaching through Luke, and if you don't believe in healing, you can't get very far in Luke, in the gospel.
Right.
So and he said, and the point he said is, you teach this stuff long enough, and you don't have to. After a few weeks, people start wanting to start trying it. They want to start getting healed. They want to start trying to pray and doing the stuff. And you have the choice of either being like, well, that's what they did in the olden days, or, sorry, I'm moving around from my mic, or because of the puppy, or you give it a go. You
give it a whirl and pray.
you bring in the woo and you go for it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and what I don't see any. Me personally, I don't think we're nearly as easily deceived as we think we are. We bullshit ourselves all the time.
That's kind of the same. Yeah, we would say that. Yeah.
But
kind of a lack of sobriety, right?
yeah. But it's not
Very
like I'm going to go around mistake Gabriel for Beelzebub.
Right.
What I'm going to what I'm most likely to do is say, come up with an excuse if what I want to do is cheat on my wife. find an excuse to cheat on my wife. If I'm inclined to do that, I'll come up with some miserable excuse that's total bullshit and do it, right? That's the sin. That's our sin nature. But it's not like I'm ever deceived. It's not like I'm ever really believing my bullshit. I'm just coming up with a line that moves the puck along towards the consummation of my sin.
Like self-justification, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I'm being a bit
can be deceived
tongue in cheek, but
I think you can be deceived by angels of light.
I
think that demons also perform healings.
I think Jesus mocked
he did.
that. I think Jesus, I'll push back a little bit, Jeremy, just to say that I think that Jesus made it absolutely clear that in fact, some would say that's the sin against the Holy Spirit, the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, the unforgivable sin. That they looked at the works of Jesus and called it Beelzebub.
Right. Yes.
I don't know if that is it. I'm just saying that some people say that's what it is, but it certainly seems pretty serious. And Jesus kind of, here's the question to ask is, did they really think Jesus was doing the work of the devil when he healed on the Sabbath?
Yes. I think.
Did they really believe it?
Yes, because here's the thing. You got to take him at face value. They said because they went by the law.
Then why was Jesus so hard on him in his response? It says Jesus never he healed blindness.
Yes.
He didn't condemn it.
Correct.
He called them hypocrites. He condemned the hypocrisy.
Okay.
Hypocrisy means play acting. They pretended.
Right. Okay.
So they weren't.
You're
not an actor if you really believe the lines.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So the question is, did they know he was the Son of God?
Or just no. The question is, did they really believe that he was healing by the power of Beelzebub, the prince of demons?
Okay, Jeremy.
See what I'm saying? He called them hypocrites for that. Yes?
He called
John 8.
Well, and I think the reason he was saying you hypocrites is because you know how to tithe, and I could be mixing up my.
Well, there's a lot of those passages, but
All right, Jeremy.
well,
go ahead.
okay,
Your thing.
go ahead. Any thoughts, Jeremy?
Please.
Yeah, no, I just stand by. We try to be sober, and we definitely believe in God. Definitely believe God moves in our lives. He intervenes constantly. The only reason I'm breathing right now is because of the intervention and the grace of God. I believe that. Now, William was saying it was illegal to do magic, and I would make this distinction. So the distinction I learned is that the difference between mysticism and magic is that magic is the desire to manifest one's will in the world.
Right.
And you generally then, if you want to take it to an even more formal definition of then trying to appease demons in order to get them to help you manifest your will in the world. And then that comes with a bunch of fine print in the contract that you realize way too late in the negotiation. Now, mysticism, we would say in contrast to that, is a surrender of one's will to God's will. So when we're praying, like I said, we just say, Lord, have mercy on your servant Ron. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on your servant Mark. Okay. Whatever happens in your life, Mark, we see as God's mercy on you. Now, that might not look like I was expecting. You might actually get sicker, because we also see sickness as having a healing power spiritually, right? If it's taken with gratitude. So for us, the whole call is to be grateful and to see everything that happens in our life as God's will for us, and that it has a larger purpose that we probably can't discern or apprehend in this life completely, but that it's all for our salvation. And so for us, Ron, you were saying, like, if we see someone with a cast, do you want to be healed? We would ask them, do you want to, I'll pray for you. But then if they get an infection and it gets worse, we wouldn't see that as our prayers not being answered. We would say, thank you, God, for the infection. Thanks for making it worse, because we know that you're healing him through pain. Because the pain is, how should I say, sanctified through our gratitude.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. So it's a surrender. So when we pray for something specific, God bless those who travel with mercy. But at the end of our prayers, frequently we say, but not our will, but thy will be done. Right. It's like a surrender to realizing, it's like an attempt at humility, at realizing we don't fully understand what's going on down here, and that God is moving in ways we can't comprehend. And that whatever happens is him moving in a way that is for our good, for our benefit, if we're grateful for it. Right? So it's gratitude is like the shortcut to experiencing grace in your life, essentially, for us.
Gotcha.
Go ahead, Ron.
No, I don't want to hog the conversation. And by the way, Jeremy, I hope I never made you feel like I'm pushing back. Like,
no.
This is
I was a full-time Mormon missionary for 2 years of my life.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Like whatever you
Mormon?
throw at me, I heard it. I was Mormon before. Yeah, I left Mormonism.
Actually, that actually gives you some sort of ninja street ability.
A little bit, yeah. But I was a young kid, so I was also
all right. So the thing for me is because of my encounter with God. See, I don't have a theory. I have an experience, and the experience then was confirmed by the word. It wasn't word first. It was total and
encounter. Yeah,
it's been that way the whole time. And for me, I think because of my encounter, I can't let anyone not win. Because I was hosed. I was hopeless. I was miserable. I was up a creek. And then when he helped me, I'm like, screw this. Ain't no one getting left behind. I am going to lock and load and rock and roll until the day I die. And I'm going to take as many as I can. And so I can't, but I do understand what you mean by suffering having some redemptive value. And I'll give you my story, my woo story with Luke Thompson. I've had a painful kick butt ringing in my ear called tinnitus. Started off with bad molars that caused blood infection, nerve damage, but a spirit attached to it, anger. And so if I ever got angry, it would crank up. If someone was around me at times angry, I could sense it. And I got prayer from everybody and their mom, and it did get better slowly, I got to say. But when I was listening to Luke, I'm like, that boy can twist a thought inside, outside, upside down, and sideways at the same time. And I was very impressed with him. And I remember I was going to the kitchen, listening to him, being totally lost, and feeling this thing starting to kick in. And I'm like, it was kind of like, what would Luke do to this thing? And because I always thought it was an outside entity coming at me, and in some capacity it was. But then I thought, let me just pose the question, because that's what I've learned from you guys, to ask some really silly questions. So just let's flip it. Hi, Sherry. I said, what if this isn't this thing coming at me, but it's me calling it? Dude, like a light switch. It was like when you pull on a door that you've been pushing on forever and then it opens. Like the moment I thought that, and it was just a thought, I felt it diminish. I'm like, what the heck just happened here? And I'm like, wait a second,
Yeah.
it's not it attacking me. I worked it. I'm like, I'm calling this thing.
Mhm.
And what I realized is when I was in improper intellectual, when I was getting in a fight in my head, in a fight I had no right to be in, that's when it would show up.
Mm. Yeah.
That was the permission.
Mm.
And since then, when it shows up, I'm like, oh, where am I wrong?
Sorry, is there some banging going on in the
Yeah,
background?
there is. They're playing basketball.
Okay, that's all. I just want to make sure it wasn't
Yeah,
a
I'm sitting
ghost
on
in the
top of
machine.
This
Yeah.
right now, the goal is right on the other wall, and they're dunking right now. They're just
That's okay. That's okay.
so.
So I definitely understand your zeal and can relate in a lot of ways. And what I've had to learn is that I have a tendency to be a codependent. So I would say that my tendency is to try to overhelp to the point where it's not help. Okay. So if I go, so I had a family member who struggled with alcoholism. And if I go and buy alcohol for them and justify it by saying, well, they were going to go anyway, and then they'll drive and then they'll cause greater harm. So I'm reducing the harm by getting the alcohol. What I've learned is that that's actually a form of self-love. And the way I would say, yeah, I know this was mind blowing to me. And the way I would explain that is that, or the way it was explained to me, I'm sorry, is that it's actually me being unwilling to be uncomfortable looking at someone I love suffering. And so I am trying to prevent their suffering because I'm unwilling to see them suffer. When in reality, if he had to suffer from quitting alcohol or not going or getting in a car accident, that might be the very thing that he needs to be released from this demon. And I'm preventing it because of my own self-love and my own willingness to sit with my own discomfort in watching him suffer. And so the true act of love is to say, I'm sorry, but I can't get alcohol for you.
Okay, I'm tracking.
And I'm not accusing you of that.
No.
I'm not saying that at all.
Listen, no.
Please forgive me. I'm
reason
just speaking from my point of view.
The reason I'm here is to be taken apart in good faith. These are good faith conversations, and I love it. I'm like,
I'm sorry. My view tends to be much more visceral.
What is it?
That is to say that when I'm hungry, I eat. When I'm tired, I sleep. I mean, it's just if the Spirit of God, and it just seems to, I know when it happens. Spirit comes over me to do something.
Right.
I know when I'm supposed to do it, and I know when I disobeyed and didn't do it. And it is. This is why I would say I would probably I'm a very quiet charismatic. I'm very quietly happy clappy, but I am clearly happy clappy. I mean, I finally owned it. It took me a year. I mean, most of my life to actually own it, but you know, I function best when I simply engage in my daily experience. There are times to walk away, and there are times, and most of the time it's let people stew in their juices. But then there are clearly moments when it's like I'm his hand puppet.
Yeah, you know, and I would agree. I wouldn't disagree.
Holy Spirit says it's these are moments of a discernment that just come vis-a-vis the Spirit, and you just.
So I guess, Jeremy, for me, I guess what it is because I've seen so much. I've seen miracles because I needed them, and my friends needed them. We weren't looking for them. We were screwed. So miracles for us were the last resort. It wasn't we were going after them. But I do understand what you're saying. I guess, what do the Orthodox like I've been with Encounter Ministries with Father Matthias Thielen, solid guy, Catholic priest.
Mhm. And I'm not familiar with him or his work.
Okay,
So.
and I know there was a Father Seraphim Rose who was some very. Are there charismatic Orthodox folk, and are there any out there that are just like, okay, let's go heal some sick, or is it just, or does that make
Well,
sense?
my priest is at the hospital 3 or 4 times a week.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, and he'll answer his phone 24 hours a day. I mean, God bless him. Like, we have a huge parish. We have almost 100 catechumens right now. He's the most overworked person I've ever met in my life, and he does it all out of love. Sure. And so now he goes to the hospital when someone is in the hospital and asks for prayers, and he goes and gives unction. We have a whole sacrament about, holy oil and prayers that go along with that. Now, is everyone who he does that for healed? Do they all walk out of the hospital? Do they all leave the hospital? No. And we say, God, glory to God for all things.
But some do.
But some do.
Okay, that's my point. And then
some do.
And
right. So I will say, since it's the Woo channel, really quick, I'll just share mine because I really can't stay too much longer, but I will share my own little personal Woo. So most of my life I experienced what I would call a demonic attack. I had sleep paralysis. I would wake up, see people standing in my room, see figures standing in my room, dark, ominous figures. I would have constant voices telling me to do horrible things, generally killing myself. I had nightmares. I had periods of time where I couldn't account for the time. A lot of these things that I would say would be clearly understood or now as demonic attack, right? And I thought it was normal. I thought it was just the way the world is, or that most people experience these things and they just didn't talk about them and wasn't a big deal. And when I came to Orthodoxy, I didn't really associate those things with spiritual life. It was just my experience. I didn't have a not experience of it, right? Yeah. But I will say, the first time I walked into Orthodox Church, and I stood, it's hard for me to talk about even now.
I like it.
But when I stood in Divine Liturgy, there's this one part. Well, first it was silent in my mind, in my heart. It was silent, and I had never experienced that before. Okay?
Oh, wow!
And there's this one part where the priest comes out and he goes, "Peace be with you all," and he blesses the crowd. Right? It blesses the people in the parish, and that just went right into my heart.
Oh, wow!
And I knew right then I was going to be Orthodox. I'm like, this is it. And I will say, to cap off the final story though, or the answer to the Woo question, was that, so in Orthodoxy, there's a practice where once a year, right after Theophany, which Theophany is when Christ was baptized and his true nature was revealed to John. John could see him as the Son of God. He was healing the waters of the world. And right after that service, so that's when they make holy water. That's when they bless holy water for the year for the parish. And then for the following 6 months or 6 weeks, getting ready for Great Lent, the priest goes to everyone's house in the parish, and he comes in and he sprinkles holy water through your house while he's singing and saying prayers. So he did that. You turn on all the lights in your house, you're singing, you're saying prayers, you're walking room to room in all the rooms in your house, and he's sprinkling holy water on everything. Now, my wife, me, and my daughter had all experienced nightmares and horrible experiences our whole life and just thought it was normal. And I will say that after that experience, it was like several months afterward, we didn't talk about it. We didn't, it was just, it naturally came up at dinner one night. My wife was like, you know what? I haven't had a nightmare in like 4 months. And I said, me neither. And my daughter was like, me neither. And we haven't ever since. Now the priest came back to our house like 6 months later, just as a visit. And he was just like, and I was walking, we were talking as a family, and then I walked him out to his car, and he's like, you know what? Your house is clear. They're being held. They're being held at bay, right? Because he knew what we had been struggling with. And And I will say that if I got no other benefit or experience of spirituality than freedom from torment,
Right.
I will be grateful and participatory
Okay.
in orthodoxy for the rest of my life, out of gratitude for relief from a life of terror.
Oh, dude.
And I can't, there's no science or material explanation for that, but I can tell you just my own experience that once the priest came and blessed my house and we burned some things that were in the house that needed to be burned.
What were those things, please? If you don't,
I don't want to get specific.
No, okay, then don't. But
I'm sorry. Because of our background. So I would just say, like texts that were involved in some of my other practices, books, statues, things that were involved in prior practices, prior spiritual practices.
Yes.
That all went out with the house cleansing. That was part of the Christ establishing his authority over my home. Right. And that's what holy water is. That's what that blessing, that's what that sacrament is that God is reclaiming that space. And ever since he has, we don't have nightmares. Okay. We sleep peacefully, and glory to God, I get a full night's sleep. And if I do wake up, I thank God for waking me up so that I can pray and thank him for waking me up. Right.
What was the process of your family converting? Was it just you personally? Was it your wife first? Was it you or then and you and your wife together, or your daughter first, or what was kind of the order of things?
It was me first. I'm definitely the seeker explorer in my family. My wife, God bless her, is more just obedient and wants peace and whatever, she's followed me all over through all of these different practices. And at first, she saw this as just another phase. She saw this as another, like, okay, here we go again. Right. Oh, he found the new thing. Right. And so she was very skeptical because we've been down this road before and our marriage wasn't going well at the time. And my daughter too, I raised her, atheistically, like anti-religion. And then, at her age 13, which is the most awkward age of all ages, I'm suddenly saying, well, we're going to church. Right. Now, 2 words of advice that were given to me very early on was, one, my priest said, never, ever make your daughter come to church, nor your wife. Never. Invite them, never force them. Because he said, if you force them, they'll never come back. And I said, okay. And that was difficult, but I trusted him and I was obedient to that. And then the second thing was, I kept talking to my wife and talking. You might be surprised to hear I talked a lot to my wife about orthodoxy when I found it. I'm being facetious, but I'm just saying, because I have a tendency to talk a lot. But she was a little fed up and she said, can we meet with your priest? And I said, sure. So I set up a meeting and we went down, and she, just said, like, I see this as a fad. He's obsessed. He has this personality of being obsessed. And I think this is just the newest thing. And it's getting kind of old and it's really overwhelming and overbearing. And he just turned to me and said, if you want to be Orthodox, then I need you to stop talking about it. And he said, I want you to only talk to your wife about Orthodoxy if she asks you a question. And then when she asks you a question, I want you to be as succinct as possible in the answer. And then to say, please forgive me, and go do the dishes.
Wow, cool.
And my wife wept because she had never had clergy who took her side in a conversation between a man and a wife, a husband and a wife.
Wow.
Right? She had never had any clergy who sympathized with her view. Right. And he put me in my spot like that.
Wow.
And I did. And he said, later on, he told me personally, when we were alone, he said, the only way that your wife is going to open up to this is if you just become a better husband.
Wow.
And don't talk about orthodoxy. Don't try to convince her. Don't convert her.
Right.
Your job is to be a good husband and to
Right.
love her and serve her. And whatever God does with her is God's business.
Right. Wow, that's cool.
And, she did begin to attend with me, and we were going to church together. And she got baptized. So I got baptized in January of 2020, and she got baptized at Pascha, which was in April of 2020. So just 4 months after me. And then my priest said, he's like, do you want to wait for your wife? And I said, if my wife ever hears that I'm waiting for her, we'll never get baptized.
Oh,
Neither
right,
of us.
right. Okay.
So let's not do that.
Yeah.
Because she'll feel a pressure. Right.
Yeah.
And so I just said, let's not worry about her. And so I got baptized, and then, she all on her own came along. And, we had struggles. It wasn't like we became more Orthodox and then marriage healed, life healed. No, it was like, clearly we're still being healed. Like, I'm still suffering with gluttony. Like, I still struggle with gluttony. I still struggle with lust. I still struggle with anger. Like, it's not like it just goes away. But now we have a framework for dealing these things, working these things out. And we have a priest who can tell me to shut up. Right. So glory to God. That's been the greatest thing that ever happened in our marriage. Now I do the dishes. Now I cook dinner. Now I help with the chores and do more around the house and show my wife that I love her and cherish her. And I'm grateful for her. And she keeps doing what she's always done, which was take care of me and do nice things for me. But we have conversations now. My relationship, the biggest miracle is that my relationship with my wife and my daughter has been healed. And now my daughter opens up to me. She talks with me. We have very deep and meaningful conversations. She shares her struggles with me. I know her friends' names.
Wow.
She, came to me for a big hug last night. And, after having a little breakdown, and I was able to just stay calm, and through sobriety, through practice, through being able to sit through my own discomfort, I've learned how to be stable and try to be a healing presence for my family and for the people I work with and my friends. And that's definitely woo in some regard.
Yeah, no question.
But I can't deny the transformation that my life and my family's life has had or gone through. Right.
So, if that's woo, that's why I stopped smoking pot. And that's what changed I got a changed heart. If that's woo, I would hope, I would pray everyone has woo, because actually it is the kingdom of heaven. Like, dude, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah. Well, it's why it's why I talk too much about orthodoxy, and I try not to be an ortho bro, and I try not to be obnoxious. And I'm just a big, loud, boisterous personality. It's just kind of my nature. I'm a passionate person. But
everything you said, I understood. It was to me, it had nothing to do with orthodoxy.
No, it's
you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Is when you said there was quiet up here, I'm like, oh, dude, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we're tracking heavy, and you had peace.
Yeah.
Oh, and those tears left. I'm like, oh, dude, that's gold.
Yeah.
That's Christianity right there.
Yeah, amen. I mean, that's my experience of it. And I didn't have that experience of it when I was introduced to what they called Christianity when I was young. Like, that wasn't what it was. I didn't experience any peace. I experienced extreme anxiety, extreme fear of death, extreme fear of dying at the wrong possible time when God was trying to catch me doing something wrong. Right? Like, I was just terrified.
You had depressive thoughts, man. You had.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I believe that's somewhat ancestral as well. I think those things go in lines, family lines, right?
That ship has sailed. Like it done got broke with you.
Yeah, well, we've been healed. So no, unfortunately, please forgive me. I do have to go.
We got to land a plane anyway.
Yeah,
thank you, Jeremy, for joining us.
What a pleasure and an honor it's been to be a part of your show. Thank you
fun.
for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure. And I know, Mark, we see things differently, and you open up my mind to new ways of looking at things as well. And I'm very grateful for that. And I want to thank you for hospitality and inviting me here and allowing me to share my experience.
Thank you for sharing. It was. I think everybody agrees it's a blessing. So
Oh, dude, and Jeremy, you're my first ortho, bro.
I wear the badge of I wear it as a badge of honor when it comes from you in that context.
Oh
It
yeah,
means a lot
dude,
to
no,
me.
I love it. I
Thank you.
seriously do.
Thank you.
That was fun.
God bless. Bless
Thanks
to
a
your
lot. Glory
families.
to God for all
Thank
things.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good night.
Mark,
All right, Ron.
land the plane.
Do you want to call it?
I don't care. I mean, you know me. I talk to the cows come home, but I don't want to.
I got a few more minutes, but I don't. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about your interview with Ashley Land next time or something. Because I had some questions and some stuff that I wanted to talk to you about.
I mean,
what did you think as you went through that?
With Ashley?
Mm-hmm.
Or the comments? What do we are you talking about Ashley or the comments?
No, I didn't even look at the comments.
Oh, because there was.
Were they rough?
Oh no, they were good. It
okay.
was. No, it was very good. I'm looking at it. It's like I think Claire and Sherry should be in here, but my cat rejoicing. So, but Ashley was a very cool person, and she's been there, done that.
How old is she? Did she tell you her age?
No, you don't.
She seems young.
She is, because she seems like mid-30s.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. She was very insightful, and I mean, she's a smart lady who did a lot of acid and was looking for God in all the wrong places, and then had some children. Oh, and what her pivot point was, she had a friend who had a child the same age as her daughter or son, and her friend's daughter died of leukemia in 3 weeks. Diagnosed, 3 weeks later, gone. And what happened is that the friend, she watched them walk through the mourning. It did not destroy them, and her friend actually comforted her through the process. You know, so this girl's, and so Ashley was thinking, because she was like Buddhist, kind of all is one and going back to the one, and you know, and there's no.
It's not very comforting.
No, well, that's exactly it. And when she said when she had her child, she goes, no. This isn't some speck, you know, insignificant speck in the universe going back. This is my child. So that's when the walls. She realized she had no grid. It was you're right, comforting. And then when her friend's child passed away, she got rocked hard. And then I think. I got to remember how she wound up at church.
There just seemed places where she still seemed stuck to me. The word "stuck" came up with PVK, and it just this was, and it's very funny because she was on Sam's channel, and I didn't. So let me play this really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Relief too to know like there's a person
it's not
at
playing.
the center
Why is it not playing?
of the universe, like the.
Why aren't you playing? I can't hear the audio.
I can.
Oh, you heard it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try again.
Such a relief too to know like there's a person at the center of the universe, like the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, and realizing that the Trinity is the ground of reality. Like there's nothing beyond that, which is a really mind-blowing thing to contemplate, you know, still. But I think that was a huge relief to me, knowing those really catastrophically bad trips where I felt like I was losing my mind. It was going to last forever. I was frying in hell, you know, and to know that there is nowhere in the cosmos or in my own mind that I could go where Jesus has not gone,
Yes.
or where Jesus could not be present. Yeah,
Yeah.
is not present. And that was, that was a huge relief for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
A relief.
yeah.
As he says,
Unfortunately, I couldn't hear that, but
okay, I can recount it for you.
I remember it fairly well.
Well, it was really what it was is when she was tripping, she was having existential angst of realizing God had gone through it all, and that God was everywhere, that she couldn't be separated from God. And that's what gave her peace.
But she didn't say God here. She said the Trinity is the ground of being.
Oh, well, here's the thing. I'll be honest. At this point, some people, when they say Trinity, they're actually talking about Jesus. I'm like, whatever. Like,
Right. But see, it's just so funny that as I said, she was on Sam's channel, and I don't think did she not even know that he's Unitarian, and one of the things that it's the there are other places that I'll have to fix my sound issues and try to figure out why I couldn't hear that, but one of the problems we have with it's a feature of American culture, not just American Christianity, but it's American culture, that we people with a good story get elevated before they're done cooking. The cookies get served while they're still doughy.
I'll give you that. I think now she's been maybe 12 years into the game.
Right.
So she's
right.
she's not fresh.
It's just then she's part of a brand of Christianity that just is like that. Just what kind of church does she go to? Any idea?
No, I did not catch that.
Yeah. Well, I've expressed the same concerns, like how quickly everyone is going to Jordan Hall. I think Jordan Hall has potential to be a huge force for Protestant Christianity in the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But I would still prefer him to have his time in the desert.
Yeah, well, here's
first.
The thing. Anytime I see a new Christian, I say, give yourself 3.5 years of just off the grid, you and a Bible and your community and a pastor, whatever, because the disciples had 3.5 years with Jesus. And then he's like, okay, I'm out. Bye. So, and I'm just, I saw this one girl who came out of New Age recently, and I'm concerned for her. She's like maybe 6 months in, and her channel, she's got like 16,000 followers now, and she's doing video chats with people, and I got to be careful because PBK said, he goes, it's usually the people who don't have the best content, that they're not the most qualified, that seem to be blowing up. And then people who have PhDs and blah, 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 have like 12 viewers. It's kind of weird. I'm learning. I told this one person, like, if you ever get in a jam, call me. I'm not. And I told her, go find a church, go get in community, get in your Bible. But I see people who've been they're not well grounded. I don't know how that sounds, but just in the basics of knowing scripture, and then I don't know how this is going to sound, but just being taught in basic, how, what do you do if you meet a demon? I mean, I think it takes mentorship, and I could be really wrong, but what am I trying to say and why? I see new people teaching, and I'm not against it totally, but I'm so yellow red lightish, kind of like, be careful, because I don't want you to get smoked. I don't want you to be put in a position of responsibility that you're not prepared for just yet. I'm not saying you won't ever get there, but I just see people getting propelled into leading people, and I'm like, do you even know how many books are in the Bible? And
Right. Well, it's all. This is where I guess we are. We're charismatics and we're Protestants and we're evangelicals and we kind of don't have. We are unmoored from traditions that and hierarchies that people like Jeremy don't have to worry about, right? I mean,
and also
it's kind of.
But I'll sink my own ship, because in the 60s, when the Jesus people happened,
Mm-hmm.
dude, you had people falling out the sky getting saved, and you would, it was a beautiful mess, and I just don't want anyone to get.
I think more in my situation, I would be interesting to talk to her. She'd probably find me really uncomfortable to talk to.
Who's that?
Because Ashley Land.
Well, why is that? Why do you think?
Because I get she has a very negative experience. I mean, one with psychedelics, but then she's what I would argue is she's throwing out the baby with the bathwater with regard to psychedelics as well as to various features of Buddhism and New Age religion. I wouldn't even call it New Age religion, but New Age-ish religiosity. I mean, there's a great deal of nonsense in it, but there's a great deal of nonsense in all religious practice, from what I can tell.
And I guess we can circle around back. Like with when me and you talk, it no longer like Danger Will Robinson. It's more like, okay.
Right.
I'm like, okay.
So it's just like the idea that, okay, you're doing yoga, that's going to invite demons into your.
I disagree with that, but I will qualify it though.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing called kinesiology, and I hope I'm using the word right. It's stretching and bending and twisting, and it looks like yoga, but there's no faith. It's just movement. You're just stretching. It's when, for me, the red light, the hard no is when you have faith. And I want you to put your hands out like this and go Om Mani Padme Om and envision the sun god coming into here to give you peace. Then I'm like, no, we don't.
But see, that's all like, okay. I think that's where the Western New Age thing is such a mess.
Okay.
Traditionally in Tibetan Buddhism, that particular phrase is Tibetan.
Yes,
it's actually Sanskrit.
Yes,
but it's most commonly associated with Tibetan Buddhism.
Okay.
And you look up the literal meaning. It's hard to even translate into English. But it's extremely benign. In Tibetan Buddhism, before you even in most lineages anyway, you don't practice meditation until you've been educated. Education precedes the process of meditation, the practice of meditation. In the West, it got all reversed. They got people sitting down and trying to meditate before they said anything.
Right.
So what resulted is a really ignorant understanding of what meditation is. Like you'll hear commonly people said, make your mind blank. I hear that a lot. I can't do that, or that's making your mind blank is inviting the devil or something. the Dalai Lama never teaches anybody to not think, ever. The guy I visited in Arizona never talked about. No, it's not letting your thoughts run away with you. Training yourself how to do that.
Right.
Certainly, that's a meditative practice.
Right.
Self-awareness is a meditative practice. But the emphasis in Tibetan Buddhism, which is maybe why I like Tibetan Buddhism, is it dovetailed so nicely with Christianity. Is that it's the emphasis is on compassion and wisdom.
Right. I remember. I remember.
So to me, that's just that they are like hand in glove. They don't. Yes, there are particulars because of the culture and because of they arose out of radically different traditions and geographically arose out of different places, right? Tibetan Buddhism it arises out of late Indian Buddhism and then moves on to Tibet and mixes with Tibetan culture. And of course, as we know, Christianity is Judaic in its origin. So with a blend of Hellenism, right? Greek stuff. So there are differences, but there was all this is happening. Of course, both are having a huge cultural exchange because of the spice trade and dyes and stuff. But basically, Indian mercantilism and Roman the Roman hunger for Indian goods, and so you get a lot of mixture going on too. But I just don't. The idea that you're going to the vast majority of, say, women, most of them are women, 9 out of 10 are women who practice yoga, will never get a demon from it, will never fall into a trap of overindulging in psychedelics. They'll just it's a form of exercise, getting out of it, maybe getting a little bit of spirituality because, most of life is thinking about the daily bread and making a living and dealing with the kids. And yoga is a chance to calm my mind, kind of embody a physical practice that unites mind with body, and that translates into a sense of spiritual something. But they'll go away with it basically unscathed.
Right. I do agree with you on that.
And I just felt like she had such a view. I felt your conversation made it seem like there's a very, very causal chain, very much a causal chain of you do this, you're going to get the devil on you. And I'm not.
I'm not pushing back on you, but the people I talk with, the ones I do talk with, are the ones who are sensitive to it, and not so much yoga, but to spirits.
That's the thing is, and I would agree. I think people who are, so it's like what Jesus said. Remember the apostle, they come across the guy who's who's severely ill, and the disciples ask, is this guy crippled because of his parents or because of some of sin he did?
Right. Okay.
And Jesus' answer is kind of neither, right?
Right. It's for the glory of God.
And I think the so-called demonic, whatever that is, I think most of that, people catch these things for a variety of reasons. Most of the time, they were already inclined to do it. It's like,
right.
I've said this about lust.
Hmm.
You know, you you're only it can only catch you if you are there to be caught. I mean, you already are
Inclined.
inclined. You're looking for the bait.
Hmm.
You don't want the hook, but you're looking for the bait.
Right. You're a hungry fish.
But go ahead. I talk too much.
No. Just here's the thing with me and you, because now we've talked enough. Okay, like when you said, like, okay, so one, I'm not against stretching, but because the word yoga is really not a religion anymore for the most part. It's a physical work.
It's an industry.
Yeah, exactly. It is material. It's been materialized.
It's as Clara says, doing yoga is an excuse to wear yoga pants anywhere you go.
Oh my gosh! And some people shouldn't.
Some shouldn't, and I don't have a problem with the shouldn'ts as much as I have a problem with the ones who should.
Yeah. Well.
It's like,
Yeah. Cover that up.
you look too good, sister. Go.
Get you.
That's all my problem. That's my problem. See, that's the thing. They are actually doing me a favor. They're showing me where I'm still caught. Where I'm still,
No yoga for Mark.
No, I haven't done yoga in years now.
I'm teasing. But
it's
to Ashley and the stuff. Yes, because what it is it's not so much yoga, but it's the people I talk to. They have a proclivity towards the spiritual. And what am I missing here? Somebody says,
Paul said Linda Ronstadt. That's fine.
Oh yeah. Oh, Linda.
But here's the thing. Here, let's go back to something real quick.
All right.
And it struck me as when your discussion in particular brought me to Romans 9. See if I can find it. I had it pulled up. And let me pull it up real quick. We'll just read it in the NIV real quick.
Yeah. All right.
Hold on. I think I pulled up. I got that wrong.
Claire is hacking, man. Claire is shooting. She goes, pastors show up and then the Bible makes an appearance. Wow, shots fired.
The problem is I think I pulled up the wrong passage. It's no, it's not Romans 9. It's Romans 14, I think.
What's the thingamabob you going for?
Yes, Romans 14. Sorry about that.
All right, Romans 14.
Except the one whose faith is weak. Okay, accept, ACCEPT.
Okay.
Accept the one whose faith is weak without quarreling over disputable matters. One person's faith allows them to eat anything, but another, whose faith is weak, eats only vegetables. The one who eats everything must not treat with contempt the one who does not. And the one who does not eat everything must not judge the one who does, for God has accepted them. Who are you to judge someone else's servant? To their own master servants stand or fall, and they will stand, for the Lord, for the Lord is able to make them stand. One person considers one day more sacred than another. This all just goes right to our whole situation in the corner, doesn't it? I mean, but it's this. Let me continue. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. Whoever eats meat does so to the Lord, for they give thanks to God. And whoever abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God. For none of us lives for ourselves alone, and none of us dies for ourselves alone. If we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. For this very reason Christ died and returned to life, so that he might be the Lord of both the dead and the living. You then, why do you judge your brother or sister? Or why do you treat them with contempt? For we all stand before God's judgment seat. It is written, etc. It's the whole chapter 14. I'm sorry, I said 9. Chapter 14 of Romans is really good on this point. Frankly, I think there are Christians. I think you can be a Christian and have. I don't have one, but you can be a Christian and have a Ganesh statue in your living room.
Now, that one I will throw. I will go. I need a flag. I'm like.
I know that trigger you.
But yes, but I'm having. But now I know. But I've known you long enough where I can discuss it.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing with you. I would be like, all right, that's my friend Mark. I'm not looking at Ganesh. I don't like Ganesh. We're not friends. You know Mark.
It's a little elephant boy. Whatever it is.
No, and I think for me, elephant boy.
Ganesh, right? Ganesh is a little right. Kind of figure with a elephant head, right?
I mean, for you to say, I'm like,
oh no, I've got the serious pastor face on. I went too far with Ganesh. Sorry, Pastor Paul.
Idol. It's an idol. No, this is.
HBO is more of an idol to me than Ganesh, frankly.
Well, I think that's right. And part of what we're dealing with is that our assumptions about what religion is and what is religious are so much more complicated right now for us. And to figure out, how we should live,
Well, my question is, and I mean this in all seriousness and not like confrontational. For me, there's certain points where, okay, Ganesh is for another team. It's not, and I'm not trying to be mean, but it's not Team Jesus. And I don't know if I'm being too simple, but basically I'm like, well, from what I've seen of Jesus, I don't want to. It's like being married. I don't want to have a picture of another woman in my life when I'm married. As I am one with Christ, I'm like, if I have a statue of Ganesh and it doesn't mean anything to me, it's a statue. But if it's something in my heart, like whatever the nature of Ganesh is, and that's in conjunction with Christ, I'd be like, I would have to throw a flag on that one.
And if someone asked me, should they have it, I'd say as a Christian, no. But what's, to me, I came into this, and part of what I like about this corner is we can have this conversation.
Right.
It's an important one. And these are difficult issues where the rubber meets the road for a lot of people. And so I don't know. I love the House of Woo. I'm so glad you guys have these conversations, and because these conversations happen in church all the time. And I don't know, maybe in churches that I like all the time, because these are the conversations we need to be having. So where are the lines with this? What should we do? And basically what happens on YouTube is, okay, pastor comes and says this. So then suddenly everything's bifurcated, when what you really want to do is have a conversation with someone, because say, okay, so what do you do? Let's get Mark's take. Didn't we get Mark's take
Yeah.
on it?
Okay, and by the
Just
way,
on the team thing, this is where
Can I-
I would
can I-
say
let
it's
me
a
throw in-
different team.
Let me throw in
Yeah,
one
yeah,
thing
yeah.
to that, because I want to say it before you say your thing. But I would not negate your salvation if you had one.
Mhm.
I need to say that before that, because I know you and I see the fruits, and I would.
Right.
Okay, so that's and
See,
that,
look, this is the Romans 14 for me. I don't see. It's really important.
okay.
So when I have a level of liberty that my faith allows me, that freaks a lot of people out, and I've dialed back considerably after my year in the corner, really active. I mean, I think I was much more, a little more out there than I am now. But Ganesh is trivial in the whole scheme of what I consider the really important stuff that comes out of Indian philosophy and religion. And even Hezi will acknowledge he sees. I've heard him mention in passing serious a seriousness to Indian religion and philosophy that Christians just can't stomach typically. But I don't see. I see my view is I don't see them as I don't see that as being a representative of another team. I just don't see it. I've mentioned in passing before that I think the Trinity is probably a product, the concept, our thinking of the Trinity, or how we came around to it, is a result of the pagan influence on I don't see it as I don't see the Trinity as an idea that is in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures. I struggle to see it in the Old Testament. I mean, I can see hints, little bits and pieces here and there, but the fact that the Jews find it so repugnant as a whole, generally speaking, that I tend to agree that it's probably a product of the expansion of Christianity into the pagan Roman Empire, and it was their paganism that allowed them to have that to grasp that revelation. And I revel in it. I don't mind it. My view of revelation tends to be, or my view of inspiration tends to be much more bottom up than top down.
Yeah.
But that to me is but it's not an important. It's not a break fellowship issue for me. If it's all top down for you, that's fine. I don't. It just, but by coming at it with having an understanding that sees it as bottom up, it allows me to talk to people more comfortably, like I think potentially I have not had this conversation with T. Grog, but like the conversation I had with our other atheist in the corner, Nathan, went fairly well because I don't have this top down. We're on different sides. I think what we see happening in paganism or in Indian religion is still God working. I just don't see it all as demons at work. I think it's all God moving to. I'm not a syncretist, but it is still God at work, and that it's. Hopefully the goal is to graduate to Jesus. but then, like this young lady that Ashley spoke
Ashley
about.
Land?
Ashley Land in her discussion with Ron talked about the Trinity being the kind of ground of reality. Well, if she had said that in Sam's presence, that'd be a collapse of fellowship. Because if they took those two discussions, right? And you're never going to convince me that Sam needs saving, and you're probably and you're not going to convince me that Ashley needs saving, right? I mean, they're in the same kingdom, they're on the same team, even if their language games, if they took their language seriously, would put them at loggerheads. Is that making sense?
I understand. I don't have time to pursue this conversation near enough. Maybe I shouldn't have jumped in, but I do want to encourage you to, because I think you are such a nice conversational pair, and because of both of your backgrounds and how you're approaching this stuff. And so I love listening to you guys, and you've got enough of, to me, this is exactly what the corner is for. You've got enough of you've developed enough of a relationship with each other that you can say difficult things. And so then if you imagine Ashley Land and Sam, has Ashley been on Sam's channel?
Yeah. I saw her first there.
Yeah, it was a good interview.
Yeah. So to me, this is, these are, we had a little, talk about T-Grog yesterday. I think part of the reason why we want T-Grog here is because we sense we want to have these conversations with him, but he's making it hard for exactly the point that you just made, Mark. Because neither Sam nor Ashley are going to sort of, do this when they're on screen together. Ashley's not going to say, "I'm not going to talk to you, you stinking Unitarian," and Sam's not going to say, "Ashley, you're exactly the kind of Trinitarian that has hurt Unitarians over the centuries." They're not going to say that. And so part of the reason why T-Grog and Nathan, back when he was much more T-Grog-like, Nathan would come into the...
Yeah, he's mellowed quite a bit.
But T-Grog is coming in, and I actually made a list of some of the, I just copied and pasted some things from that he'd write in the chat. I shouldn't misquote him. He says things like Alex Jones or Alex O'Connor. By the way, knowing as you are known is a load of mystical crap.
Yeah, his texts get harsh.
Not having a dialogue. Calvinism is a demon god.
Before you go, Paul, let me pitch this at you really quick. And you too, Ron. This is where I'm at, and this may be very triggering, and I apologize. To me, even if someone is praying to something, as Ganesh is a figure for good fortune and prosperity, that sort of thing.
He moves
I think
obstacles.
That's it. But okay, so you're praying to Ganesh, or you're praying to an ancestor, or you're praying to a saint. All right, boom, boom, boom. These are kind of layers of inappropriateness for a good Protestant, right? A good Protestant doesn't pray to saints, and a good Protestant certainly doesn't pray to ancestors or to little idols. My point of view is coming at it from a slightly different perspective. I like when people pray, because it has them thinking of something more than themselves or something bigger. So can we possibly see it as a seed for potential growth? So if you're praying at one level, a very primitive level, at a kind of, then your consciousness or your mind or your awareness expands out into bigger and more important and more substantial, until maybe at some point if you're praying to a little godlet, maybe then you'll become aware that, well, there's okay, and your mind develops. It's just to say this happens in one person's lifetime. I'm thinking, well, okay, but my dead father meant a lot to me, so I'll pray to him. But where's my dead father? Well, maybe at some point I'll come to an awareness, my dead father is in heaven with God. Well, why not? The thought comes to me, and I'll go, well, maybe I should pray to that God. And then someone so you find yourself on Mars Hill, and here's the monument to the unknown God, and a preacher comes along and says, "Let me tell you about this unknown God." And he has a son, and he came to Earth, and it's you get Paul's sermon, right? So, and people can be converted when they're in a position, rather than thinking of people being trapped. Can we think of them as being potentially, they're more likely to be converted? Whereas if your position is, it's all nothing, and the only thing this is reality, baby, and it's this when you're dead. It's like going to sleep, and so live for the moment. To me, it seems like a person has potential if they have. So I think I've explained enough to give you an idea. Is there anything to that, or is it just? Are you really? I mean, is it really much more? Well, you have experience with at the international level, people functioning.
I live in Northern California. I am surrounded by friends who have Ganesh. They have all sorts of things. What we're wrestling with is pluralism, and what we're learning is that pluralism is a very complex thing. And now, what I've come to learn is that there are blessings in hardlining, and there are blessings in patience. And so I watch people take different takes. Now, Chad the alcoholic talks about the fact that he is in some ways grateful for his alcoholism because it brought him to Christ. And so the fact is, and I'm not trying to equate someone who has a statue of Ganesh with alcoholism, because they're very different things. But it's also the case that, when I look at someone like T-Grog, and he says, I'm much happier now that I'm no longer a Christian in the way I used to be. And I'm not prepared to say that his deconstruction is a bad thing, because I don't know how he was before he deconstructed. And I've seen cases in which people's deconstructions actually are part of a path to loving Christ in a better way. And so I think I try to not be the judge of too much. And but yet I also know that, I don't have icons in my office, not because I think icons are necessarily a terrible thing, but I also know that people have propensity to get attached to certain things. And so I think it's in connection with the conversation that you guys were having. They could be, things like yoga, which, it's very easy to sort of look at yoga and say, there's some real things to be cautious with yoga about. But there's, hasn't TV probably been a bigger pit for many people than yoga? And so we do live in this context where there are many pitfalls, and hardline conservative religion can be a terrible trap for some people, and it can make them self-righteous and mean-spirited and it turn them into ghastly people. But yet I'm a religious conservative in many ways. So it's a difficult thing. So we ought to be, it's funny, judge not that you be not judged is a is a saying that requires a lot of wisdom, because on one hand, it should definitely impact our relationship with one another. And at the same time, all of us must be discerning with all kinds of things in our lives. And
can I tell you something?
Yeah.
Because I've talked with Mark so long, I'm like, okay, like if I would have met him a year and a half ago and he's like, I have a statue of Ganesh, I'm like, hell no, I'm out of good, you heretic, But now I look at who he is emotionally under pressure. And like, okay, that be Jesus. And when the going gets rough, you're calling on Jesus. Now, you might have some things you have, it doesn't flip me out. I'm not an advocate, like between me and you, like, fine, whatever. No, but whatever. Now, if it was a new Christian, I would think, this is what I would think. I'm like, well, I'll just start with me. When I was a Buddhist, I was all about abortion. I was pro-abortion. It didn't bother me, reincarnation. And then when God showed up that day, I actually had the Spirit of Life come and say hi to me. And it was a beautiful thing. And this is the thought that happened to me. Oh, wow. This life, I don't decide when I come into this life, nor do I decide when I leave. Let it be. And that was my moment. Without that moment, I might still be okay with it.
Yeah.
So I look at, so if someone has a statue, I'll be like, all right, I don't like it, but what else is going on that's good, that's working, that's functioning, that's proper? And are you seeking God, or maybe like, no, I want Jesus and Ganesh, and maybe Ganesh more on the weekend?
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say one thing and then I got to go. I try to be as generous with the hardliner as I am with the flexible. Because what I often see is that people who are sort of team flexible, they're really judgy towards the hardliners. And I always think, that's an interesting dynamic. They can be flexible with everyone except the hardliners.
Right.
So, and whereas I find hardlining has its place and its role, and I've seen hardline ministries. I tend to be much more flexible.
Okay.
But I see hardliners accomplish some things that I think sometimes I couldn't have gotten that person there, but this hardliner could. But there's also dangers in hardlining, and so I think God uses both. So.
I've seen in Indian footage. I think it was a documentary or something, Michael Wood or something, about Indian philosophy or something, and they were driving by images of the various little stalls selling icons and whatnot, and Jesus was right up there with the others, all the other little saints and yogis. And to me, it still warms my heart, the idea that Jesus was there. I know they're using him for a completely different purpose, but the fact that he's venerated and considered. Jesus is very popular in India, as I understand it, even if Christianity isn't. And the Dalai Lama was absolutely clear. His view of Jesus is that gave him the highest honor he possibly could within his worldview, and calls him a Buddha. But we're all limited, and we all have these constraints. But you're right. I think conservative people need a church too. So when in the rush to progressivize, that it's failed. Apparently, and certainly in some denominations, but this is why I read the Romans 14 passage. Is that it's so much more about the other person than it is about me. Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
And you argued for a centered approach, because you said if this gets them closer to, and you can engage Clara on the cop out thing, because I don't think I'm copping out. Because the truth is that if a person comes to me and asks me for advice, and I get this now that I'm on the internet, in real life, I will say, tell me more. Tell me about this statue. What does this statue mean to you? Why do you want this
Yeah.
here? I mean, because it's within, again, this is to me what the corner is about. You have a conversation like this in relationship, which is exactly what you were saying, Ron.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to build a relationship, and then you can actually have a productive conversation. Whereas what we have too often in churches and on Christian YouTube is we're just throwing out hard lines, and then you've got other channels throwing out soft lines, and it's like,
Well, and to be
anybody?
honest with you, this is a perfect conversation because when Clara made that statement, like copping out, what bothered me is like, am I? Because I think I am by nature a hardliner, mega, and I don't want to screw up in front of God. I don't want to be the nice guy and God go, you pissed me off. But nor do I want to be a sledgehammer wielding nut job. But I like what you said. So I'm allowed to go, okay, I don't like it, but tell me more. Why? And I can live with that.
Well, it's what you do. See, that's the thing. It's already what you do with Mark, because you and Mark have built this lovely relationship. Now, Mark's easy because Mark loves Jesus, and it's not hard to see.
Right.
But you've developed this relationship with Mark, and now you can have the conversation. And that's most of what I want for people is to say, all right, these are real issues. They're real pastoral issues. But one of the things you learn as a pastor is that, yeah, you can lay down rules,
Right.
but some people will follow them, and sometimes some of those rule followers they become really problematic.
Right. Yeah.
So you deal with people one at a time. But I gotta go.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. I got to go too. I will. Thank you, PVK.
Thank you for welcoming me into the house of Woo. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. And next time you'll have to bring a story.
Oh, dude, I want to hear some stories, please.
I've got lots of stories.
Dude.
Another time, my friends. Another time.
Haiti. Yeah, I bet you we got some good stories. Thanks, guys. Good night.
Mark, it was fun.
It was fun.